Romania had an election yesterday and they have a new president, but so does the country of Chad, apparently. Let me explain. To understand what just happened in this election, we need to go back to last year when the election was supposed to happen. This is Georgescu. He's a wacky, far-right, pro-Russia conspiracy theorist meme candidate. He believes just about every crazy idea you can think of and a few others you can't even think of. For example, he doesn't believe water is H2O. He was a complete joke candidate with no prospects of winning until a few weeks before last year's election, when Mother Russia poured a ton of money into Romania to run an online, clandestine shadow campaign for him. And it worked. He won the first round of the election with 23% of the vote and was headed to the runoff. But thankfully, Russia wasn't particularly subtle, and an investigation found overwhelming evidence of foreign interference that affected the outcome, so the Supreme Court annulled the first round and the election had to be rerun. Ironically, Romania's Liberal Party was also found to have spent a ton of money in support of Georgescu, allegedly, which reminds me of when the Democratic Party in the US funded the campaigns of crazy MAGA lunatics in Republican primaries because they thought they would be easier to beat in a general election. Anyway, Georgescu, the wacky Russia-backed dude, was also banned from running the election again. But the problem with just banning candidates is that their voters don't simply go away, especially voters who are angry at a political system that is kind of broken to begin with. And in this case, they massively rallied behind George Simion, the candidate for the Alliance for the Union of Romanians, or AUR. That's a neo-fascist party with ties to the Iron Guard, a revolutionary religious fascist movement from last century known as the Legionnaires. And AUR is also pro-Russia, by the way. So Simion got over 40% of the vote in the first round of the election, so it wasn't looking good for the second round. But basically everyone who didn't vote for him in the first round rallied behind his runoff opponent, centrist independent candidate and Bucharest Mayor Dan. Dan made a name for himself fighting corruption in the real estate industry, but apart from that, he's your typical center-right pro-EU status quo candidate with conservative social views and neoliberal economic policies. So not a great candidate for historic change either. But like in most elections happening nowadays, the two available flavors were fascism and not fascism. And last night, Romania chose not fascism. Dan won the runoff with 54% of the votes. It wasn't even close, thanks to the highest election turnout in Romania in 25 years. But when the initial exit polls started to come out, the Simion camp were looking at their own pro-AUR results and they were convinced that they had won. So Simion declared victory on Twitter saying, "I am the new president," but he used the flag of Chad instead of that of Romania. So I'm not sure which election he was referring to, but in Romania, the centrist Dan won. That being said, we'll keep an eye out for the inauguration speech of George Simion as the president of Chad, so follow for more.